All right, so I'm going to talk about a topic called data culture for everyone, and with the help of event storming and domain-driven design. So first of all, I will introduce myself a bit, and my name is August, and I've been with the Forefront for 3.5 years, and I'm a part of the solution architecture team here. And in our work, we try to do more of a team-driven approach to architecture, trying to move away from the more old school ivory tower kind of style. And also, as an architect, I truly believe in working with just enough the structure in order to get forward and deliver value. And also just the doing part is very important for me, and not just drawings and models. Also right now, just for you to get a bit of sense who I am, I like working with domain-driven design, as I do in one of my largest projects right now, and also with event-driven architecture, and also looking a bit into graph technology, which is something that I find is very interesting. So for today's topic, I will speak a bit about the data culture as I defined it. And so a bit introduction to what that is. Most of today going to be about Google Cloud Platform and how to leverage the cloud technologies. But in order to do that properly, we need to have first and foremost good data, but also a culture where we know what data is and how we're going to use the data. So I think this comic strip is a kind of good summary of one of the many problems that we can see at many places, that, okay, we have a lot of KPIs, we have a lot of information, but we don't really know what they're all about and how we're going to use them. So then it doesn't really help us to have a lot of information. So in order to solve this, we have the common abbreviation that's called GIGA, and that's garbage in, garbage out. And that's just like a common principle when you work with data and analytics, that if you don't have clean data to work with, well, the results, they won't be that good either. So in order to combat that, we need to be able to take advantage of the data we got in a more meaningful ways. And we need a collaboration between the business that works with the processes creating data and that use the data in their work, and the developers that take forward the data and create the KPIs necessary. So it's really about the collaboration in essence. One way that we can create a better collaboration in order to have better data quality and better understanding is the topic of event storming, and that's what I'm going to speak about mostly today. So event storming is it's a workshop method or a tool that you can use to explore the business or a business process, and it's done in a very light and agile way. So therefore, it's a very good tool to have under your belt and to do if you want to understand something and to lay the basis for a data culture or a data collaboration. So this is me doing an event storming session at one of our customers, Academic Work, where we have done a lot of these and we have been very successful. So I want to tell you more about that. So as you can see here on the pictures, it's a very analog method. It's about post-its on a big canvas, but it's actually quite valuable. And I will now introduce you a bit more to the method itself. So let's get into it. So event storming then. So as I mentioned, it's a workshop format, and it's good for quick exploration of complex business domains or value streams, you could say. And how you do one is that you need a modeling surface, and that's basically a blank canvas. You can use a piece of paper and put it up on your wall, or you can have large whiteboards, etc. But basically a large space. And you really don't want to be constrained by the physical space. If you get constrained by the physical space, you also get constrained in your thoughts, and you try to squeeze in things just to fit it to the physical space. and that's not good. This is actually one of the common problems usually. You should have a lot of space so you don't get constrained. And then you also need sticky notes, a lot of them, mainly orange for this first part, but also a piece of pencil. And for everyone to be able to collaborate, a good visible legend with how you do it is also good as a baseline. And then no seats in sight, and you will have basically a standing, more moving workshop format. So this is like the prerequisites of why you're doing it. And I will get more into like the whys and hows and like the effects on it. But basically this is an event storming, what you're gonna need. And as many similar modeling techniques, you have more classic ones like UML or BPMN that architects usually use when you want to flesh out a process or understand a system or something. That can be quite good, but usually the ones that understand them is only the architect, like him or herself, and it's not really useful as a collaboration tool or when you're going to show anyone else. So this is a much more lightweight process that everyone can both participate in and understand, which I think is very, very, very good and useful. It looks like something like this. And it was created by this guy actually, called Alberto Brandolini. He's an Italian, and he came up with this idea when he was doing a lot of domain-driven design, and he was just trying to like show his train of thought basically, and he wanted to be able to collaborate on domain-driven design with his peers. So he invented this model when he had a piece of canvas in his backpack, and then it just has developed from there. And there's also a good book by him available online, and a little of the content here is also from his material, which is very good. And there's also a good of YouTube videos that you can watch him explain it a bit further after this. But basically, he says it's a platform for collaboration, not a rule-based system. And that's also important to have in mind. So before we dig down even more into the use cases of event storming and how you're going to do it, just want to give you a bit more context in what it's coming from and where you can go with it. So if you're not familiar with domain-driven design, it's a concept, or it was actually a book written by Eric Evans in 2003. So it's not really something new, but he's been around for a lot of time, but had a more or less a little revival in the last couple of years with microservices and event-driven architecture, where it fits actually very good. And one of the main concepts here in domain-driven design is the ubiquitous language. And the ubiquitous language is a common language or a understood language between the technical experts and the domain experts, the business experts. And why this is so important, especially when you're talking about data and analytics, you need this common ground in order to collaborate. And I think the ubiquitous language is a quite good term for creating that. And when you can have this understanding, you can much easier develop the right type of analytics, dashboards or KPIs or whatever you need that actually makes sense, that you do understand. So this is basically the foundation of having something useful that you can put in your new tools that you can have with the cloud technologies. So building upon domain-driven design then, if you're going to do an event storming, you will use a lot of the common principles and building blocks of domain-driven design, but in this workshop format. So the reasons for doing this, like what you can get out of it, is quite a lot actually, since it's more a platform of exploration than it's for this purpose. So you can tweak it and twist it a bit to your own need, but these are some main use cases, and I'll also explain how I have used them and how we have been successful using them at academic work. But basically, these are the four main topics. So the first one is improving your organization. So maybe you have a value chain or a process or process line of some kind, and it maybe has a system or several systems that supports it, and you want to optimize it. And then you can just gather the participants of that product line and do an event storming session in order to like find the good and bad stuff, basically. So you can dig into the business flow and model basically the entire line. You can uncover a lot of inconsistencies and like competing goals and other perspectives that you might have not realized. And also you can highlight the key impediments to value creation and value delivery, which is very good for optimization. So as you can see, the event storming process will help you build this narrative and also focus your efforts on where you can do the most difference. So that's one of the points, like effectivization of a current or like existing process or system flow. If you're more like greenfield approach, you can use it more as a like describing your landscape. So you want to like model a new ecosystem, you can use this as a good canvas to start out. And you can also create like a storytelling between your business vision and your system to support it, which is very good in the early stages. And also highlight like the architectural boundaries or bounded contexts of the new system in order to like size it and the correct way, you can say. And the two other common use cases are just if you want to develop new services, you can use this as a collaboration between the key stakeholders, and I will go into more the details who should be involved, but usually it's the development team and the representatives from the business. And you can then support the different cross-discipline discussions together with this language, which helps you in the collaboration. And since you like model everything that's happening, you also have the different perspectives and handovers, which is quite good. And also, which is kind of interesting with this, you can take it from the most high-level view even down to actual like software design. So even if you start out with maybe just like everyone that just use the system as of now, like generic business users, you can then like improve upon your model and then break it down into smaller groups, and then you will actually have sort of the requirements there for you to actually build your system upon in a quite high amount of detail, which is very good. So in order to summarize a bit, there is more a platform of discovery than a specific tool or use cases. So it's very flexible. So you can use it and tailor it towards your needs. Then again, I think it's always important that you should you should know what you want to use it for. You shouldn't just start using it, even though you might have some good ripple effects. You might find the good stuff out of it that you didn't expect. I mean, you should have a purpose. You should do it for a reason. When I did it at academic work, we used it more as the platform for discovery of our new system that we're going to build. So we were building a new greenfield system landscape, and we wanted someone to capture both the business representatives and the developers and get everyone together. So we used it there and then as a starting point, and then we iterated on that later. So we used it a lot, but we started when we wanted to start a collaboration. So these are some of the use cases, and there are of course more, and there might be some discussions regarding this in the studio panel afterwards. But if you then look at it, you can break down the use cases down to mainly 3 different versions of it. So the big picture is usually done with less technical people, and you can gather everyone, and you only work with basically events, and you just try to capture a narrative of the business. And then you can drill down and you have a little more narrower group towards the more technical stuff. So when you're down to software design, you add a lot of notations into the model, and then it gets more technical and more detailed, and then you don't have to be as many. So you take something big and then you drill it down in more detail. So before I tell you exactly how to do it, this is my view of how it looks at many organizations today and what event sourcing can help you with. So if you do the big picture event storming, which is a good starting point if you've never done this before and you want to try it out on a existing process or workflow or something new that you're going to build, this is usually how it looks like. So you will have a shape of the organization, the people involved in the sort of value stream that is made out of, if you're at least a bigger company, several different departments or groups of people, and everyone knows their expert area very good. And there's a bit of common saying that if you're an IT person or developer, you don't understand the business, and it might be true in some senses, but also it's kind of true that a lot of parts of the business really don't understand the other parts of the business. They more understand their own part very, very good, and this is usually quite revealing when you do this event storming workshop, that you find your different gaps of knowledge distribution. So when you try to map out the whole process or value stream, you will find that, okay, who does this part? And it's usually just one or two guys, or no one really knows, which is kind of interesting. So it's kind of good for just aligning what you're actually doing and just finding the gaps in that as well. But what's good here then, when you gather all the persons, if you're doing this big picture one, that is a value stream, and you have people from the business, that's from different departments, they will be forced to fill these gaps and create this narrative together, which also brings people together, but also helps finding these areas, and might be sometimes quite a lot of tension between groups if there are conflicts, but that's good to address those early at least. And what you will do, sort of the main point of the whole event storming, is you will create a business narrative using business events. And basically all the events will be represented by these sticky notes and be something that happens in the business. So once you're done, you will have the story of the business, and it will be the complete story, everything that you have that's important, and you will have worked upon it together and incrementally. And that's really powerful as a result, that you can see, okay, we did this, we created this, and this is actually it. And usually it will be a lot of aha moments for everyone that's participating. And you also can address these conflicting areas. And if you're a developer, usually your role will be a bit more passive in the initial stages, since you will observe and you will more or less listen in. You need to learn the business in order to create a good system support for it. And therefore, this is really valuable for you, and if we're both if you're a developer or user experience designer or something else, this is the goal that you want after. So you can take a bit more passive role, but also ask your questions and help the business out to model the process together. So this is what you can use it for, and the main concepts. So a bit more detail in hands-on, how you're actually doing it. So it will basically be done by placing domain events, and this is for the big picture workshop where you only use mainly this one notation. So an event or a business event or domain event is something that happened in the context of the business. So an example here, maybe in an e-commerce store, is an item added to cart. That's something that happened in the business. And you use orange stickers for this. It's very important to keep the consistency in color coding. And then you always write it as a verb in past tense. And this is also important because it makes the whole exercise a lot easier. Because if you're just writing something as in the present or a question, you always will have a multitude of different alternatives to that. If you want to change something, well, then there can be a lot of different outcomes of that action. But if you model it as something in past tense, it has happened, then you know, okay, exactly this has happened, and then you can take a proper follow-up action on that. So it's much more easier to build this storyline narrative from it. And it should also be relevant for the domain experts. So these are business events, not database lost connection or something, or it's really like something relevant that happened in the business that moves a process forward. It's not clicks, it's something you do to move a value stream forward. So some more examples. So from the domain I've been working in the recruitment industry, you could have an employee onboarding completed. Okay, that's important for us. And then you can use like the middle out, so you don't have to start from the beginning. Like in order to onboard someone, you can have a job advert published. And then maybe in between that, you have employee hired. And in the end, you need some time to be reported. So these are important like business events formulated as a verb in past tense. And some not as good examples that you will also find when you do this in the beginning. And it's not, I mean, you shouldn't go around and point this out to people because you want everyone to participate, but you should avoid phrasings that are general, that's not really past tense, like publishing, job advert, employment, update employee. Okay, maybe like employee updated could also work, but you also want to avoid like these CRUD terms, like create, read, update, delete. You want more context, like user registered or contract drafted or contract signed, not like create if it's not really a create event. So you want to capture really the wordings of the business, and this is also central in the domain-driven design concepts. So you can try to do it as properly like semantics as possible, but really that's not it's not the most important part. But in the end then, when everyone's instructed to do this, you will have everyone writing these key events in the domain on an orange sticky note, in a verb, in past tense, and placing them along a timeline. So the timeline here is the canvas, and it's not really the calendar time. Like this is what I do on Mondays. It's more like the cause and effect type of time. So all the things that happened before will be to the left, and the things that's consequences after will be on the right. So you will maybe start at some sales or order placement or something like that, dependent on your business, and work through the offerings and maybe the payments and fulfillment or whatever it is you're doing. But sort of that's the timeline you want to have as a guide when you're placing all the events. And in the beginning, when you do this, it will be a bit. People will be a bit afraid, but they will soon catch on, and just start placing good stuff. And after a while, you will have a lot of events. So usually what you will see is that you will have everyone that maybe have written the same things or in the wrong order. So after 15 minutes or so, when everyone, as you have a substantial amount, you can start to reorder this and sort of like bring order to the chaos that you've created. And you can remove duplicates and try to like focus them on structure, not putting up more stuff. And this is also really important for finding these gaps and really fleshing out the real timeline. And also you can use like pivotal or key events to do this. Maybe you have like an order or a invoice or a customer that has registered some key parts that you can use as markers for you to structure your work around. And this is also like, when you've done this, you're more or less in the end of this big picture workshop style. But one thing that's very good to finish off with is doing some form of either dot voting on problems and opportunities, and then you take like red sticky notes for problems and green for opportunities, and you place them along the timeline, and you can vote on the most important problems or opportunities. Or you can do like a value creation and value destroyed, which is basically similar, but you will look at the timeline and see, okay, is this really adding value or is it destroying value? And then you go through that and then you can vote also. So in the end, you will have some like pointers on, okay, this is actually like the good stuff, the bad stuff, and this is the most important stuff, the things that you need to fix the next day. So that's also really good. And also you would have like gained a lot of like knowledge of just learning, and also probably met new people and understood the perspectives of the other ones, maybe in an adjacent process or handover line. So when we did this, it can look something like this. So you have the blank canvas, and then you have a few of the notes, and then you start to get a bit more, and then you will have a lot. And then you have to structure this. But you will basically have the story of the company or the process line on the whiteboard, which is super interesting and really cool. In these times, also gotten the question can you do this remotely? Yes, you can. We've done this using a tool called Miro, and it's a very good whiteboard tool. So we've both done these sessions in remote, but also used it to digitalize the physical versions. And really the artifact that you do create, maybe that's not the important part. It's sort of the conversations, the learnings that you do in the workshop, but you can do it as a reminder to go back if you want to, and maybe detail up in small parts. But usually we'll find, okay, the key findings we or takeaways during the workshop, that's the important part. So I can definitely recommend doing it both digital and online. No, not digital and online, but digital and in person. And if you're going to do it with a lot of people, I would not do it online because it will be hard to capture conversations, but you can try it out. So here you've seen mostly these orange events and also maybe some red that is problems and green that's opportunities. But if you do the other parts, not the big picture like process modeling or software design, you will introduce more concepts. And I will not go through all of these, but for you to have seen the whole part where you can use in other areas, especially if you're doing software design and you're actually building event, domain-driven design, event-driven or event-sourced systems, this is really important. And then you will have these commands, these aggregates, external systems, domain events, read models, user interfaces, actors or people, policies or reactions, and then you will have a command again, so that it will start over. So this has been a short introduction to event storming, and maybe you have at least gotten an intro to how we can use it, how can it help me, and I hope you found it interesting. But to summarize a bit, I would say that, it's a good starting point if you're out in a new project or initiative, you want to do something new and you're looking to you want to have good structured data, you want to create the foundation of good collaboration between the business and developers, and you want to have good understanding of your data and actually create the basis for good quality data. And it's a lightweight and easy, and it's not you should have a purpose, but it has a lot of use cases. So you don't have to think about too much. You can just try it out and see if it works for you. And then the domain-driven design and business events is really good for both having as a source of data in a data stream or messaging system, but also to capture semantics of the business and the intent in the implementation itself, which is really good. And then I would say that having this understanding between developers and the business that you can do with business event storming, and domain-driven design is really good and sort of the foundation for using good analytic platforms, machine learning, and other technologies to the full extent. So that's everything for me, and I hope you found it interesting. Thank you.